you so much, Rahul, sir, for being here. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege for me and all the attendees here to learn from you and to get a piece of your mind out of this discussion. So, sir, I know that we have time constraints which we need to respect. So, I will straight away jump into the nitty gritties of the webinar and start with the questions. What is Maritime Labour Convention and why is it so important?
Hi, good evening, everybody. I am sorry if sometimes the voice will not be very clear because today's screen, the Wi-Fi connection is not very good, and I apologize for that, but I can't do nothing much about it right now. So please bear with me. And in case somewhere I am getting lost, I will try to go slow today, and so that in case I am getting lost, you can catch up very easily. And let me know in the chat if my voice is not coming at all, so that I can repeat it again. Don't worry about the PowerPoint. It is a very simple PowerPoint with only specific points in that. And it would be okay that if you just read the point and I will be explaining that point in detail. So without taking much time now, first of all, let me give you a brief what is MLC. Okay, how many of you out here know what is the full form of MLC? Can you please type it in the chat? Everybody who knows the full form of MLC, please type it in the chat. Full form of MLC, please type it in the chat. All of you who are there. I'm still to see anybody. Okay, somebody. 𝗟𝗯𝗏𝗂𝗏𝗃, 𝗍𝗪𝗏𝒀. Hi 𝗍𝗪𝗏𝒃, how are you? Karishma. Okay, Prateek Rana. Very nice. So I'm happy that a lot of you people, the full form is please type in. Okay, Anubhav, that you wrote. Very nice. So this is just a kickstart for everybody. And so I had shared MLC some topics which Anubhav has already mentioned in that. So I hope you had time to read something about it. But anyway, first of all, let me tell you what is MLC basically. MLC is Maritime Labour Convention, as rightly pointed out by many people out here. And you are aware that in today's world, almost 75% of the trade is happening by the sea, happening by the rivers, happening by the ocean. And that is where the seafarer are coming into play. Now, a seafarer for a long time were controlled. Gaurav, thank you very much. Seafarer were for a very long time being controlled by the labor ILO, labor organization, International Labour Organization, and a lot of their concepts were being applied to seafarers. When I was studying my masters and when I was doing my studies, I used to study about the ILO, what ILO does and what are the articles of ILO which are applicable to a seaman. And the typical ones, especially the age, the contract, the wages, they were always there. But at some point of time, it was realized that the seafarers have a very different kind of working atmosphere and a working style, and their ways of getting into a contract are very different. And that is why it was thought to make something more specific for the seafarer. And that is where sometimes the rights of the seafarer were to be found. And that is why sometimes MLC is also called the Bill of Rights. And that is why the rights of the seamen are controlled into this labor convention. As you would see, while I keep talking, I would be talking one-sided in the favor of the seafarer who was employed on a ship. And everything which I will be talking about is in concern for the best benefit to a seafarer. Such an MLC was made and it started in 2006. And by 2013, finally on 20th August, it was implemented and it was ratified. And now I believe about 90 countries or about 95 countries have already ensured that it is also a part of their local regulation and can be implemented in their ports. But remember, MLC is not something to be implemented into the local waterways of a country. A country is allowed to make its own rules. But for any international vessel which is coming to their ports, they should be able to follow and monitor that vessel for the compliance of MLC. And even if they are not adhering to this Maritime Labour Convention, there's a flexibility given to ensure that the basic essence, the basic spirit of Labour Convention, Maritime Labour Convention is followed and ensure that it is a part of the domestic system. MLC is considered like one of the four pillars of the seaman world today. The other being SOLAS, that is safety of life at sea, which talks about the various regulations in which a vessel can be constructed and operated. Then STCW, that is the training and certification of the seafarer and the institutes and the various courses to be done. MARPOL, that is marine pollution and the pollution being caused by various ways where it can be managed by the vessel and the port. And finally, the Maritime Labour Convention. So Maritime Labour Convention has been given such a good power, such a good teeth, that it is considered as one of the pillars of the seafarer's life and a shipping company, a shipping world. It is one of the pillars on which the shipping world is standing. So apart from that, one has to be very careful about the seafarer's rights. As you see, what is MLC talking about? Basically, that is what is given there. MLC is talking about the repatriation of the seafarer, the accommodation conditions of the person where they live, the medical care that they might require at various times, the access to seafarer welfare centers and social security protection. Now, social security protection is still a topic which is being confirmed by many of these states, and there are some things like the PF fund, the gratuity, the pension, and all those things are still not too evident still, but it is being implemented. MLC sets out minimum requirements for the seafarer work on ship, like minimum age, medical fitness, training. Now the minimum age is kept at 16 years, but till the age of 18 years, there are certain jobs only that those people can do, and not all the kind of jobs which are there. Then medical fitness, the seafarer himself needs to make sure that he is fit and before he joins the vessel. And before they join the vessel, there is a proper, I'm sorry, member of Legislative Council, I really don't know, that is something else, which we are not talking about here. We are talking about Maritime Labour Convention. So MLC is that here. So let's move on. And the training that a person, a seafarer should have, that one can be employed on the ship to work in a safe manner. MLC talks about the condition of employment, which includes minimum working hours which a person should work on a ship. As you understand, a seafarer stays on board. So he sleeps on board, he works on board. So practically speaking, he can be made to work 24 hours. But then, once upon a time when there was a master who was the overall in charge of anything and everything, he could make rules of what the kind of work a person did on board. But today, with MLC in place, there are various requirements of rest and various things which are to be taken care of on the ship, like their living conditions, their food, their water they drink, the medical attention that they get, and also the hours of rest that they do. There is a big equation of 8 hours in a day or 10 hours a day a person can work, 72 hours of rest in a week one should get, and things like that. And of course, the wages have to be defined in a proper way. Their leave period has to be defined, and such other related matters of a typical contract, which even ashore we have. And those things are now made more focused, more streamlined to what a seafarer would do. And that is how MLC has come into picture. Next slide, please, Anubhav.
Yeah, sir. If you allow, can I ask one question, sir?
Yeah, please, please.
Sir, I can see this very similarity between the seafarer rights incorporated in MLC and the labor laws we have in India. So what was the special need for incorporating an international law in India, and how did the MLC came into picture in the very first place?
See, as I started, before it was ILO, which was their International Labour Organization, the various conventions, various articles, various things which were mentioned in that. That was followed as a part of the seafarer rights and the seafarer condition of employment and things like that. But over a period of time, people realized that seafarers have a much special way of working. They are living in the same place where they are working. They have to, they are traveling from one place to another. So it's a different jurisdictions which are there. Now, if you are having a labor law in India, that same labor law is not applicable in US. It's not applicable in UK. It's same not applicable in Australia. Now, if every country started putting its own labor laws on every ship which went, it would be very difficult. And not only that, at one point of time, it was that some of the countries, Scandinavian countries especially, they had very, very, very beautiful laws which protected the seafarers. But there were some other countries which were not ensuring that such good rights and things were implemented for the seafarers. So in order to make a broad playing field, that this is a minimum standard which every seafarer should be allowed on board. That is why the MLC was brought into picture. So I think I've answered your question. So let's move on to the next slide.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, today's topic was not actually about MLC, what it is MLC, but it is more about, which everybody is talking about, is how MLC and COVID, they have come into play. Now, you know that MLC is basically what? MLC is basically the rights, the labor rights, the seafarer rights, which every ship owner, every manager needs to ensure is implemented. Now, what did COVID do? And what has the repercussion of all this? That how effective MLC is for the implementation during the COVID. So what are the challenges which MLC faced and how did they overcome it over a period of time in the last few months? This is what is today's topic. So MLC implementation challenges due to COVID-19. Under Regulation 1.2 of MLC 2006, medical certificates have to be issued to the seafarer. The maximum validity of such certificate is 2 years. We will later come to know in this presentation that how this was managed. The Title 5 of MLC, every ship above 500 gross tonnage must possess a Maritime Labour Certificate. So every ship which is 500 gross tonnage or more and going to sea should have appropriate audit carried out by the responsible organization and must have a labor certificate. You will understand why I am talking all this after some time. Standard 2A 2.4 paragraph 2 of the MLC prescribes at least 30 days leave in a year for a seafarer. So which means even if the seafarer is on board for 12 months, he is expected to be at home out of that 12 months for 30 days, so that can be counted as his leave period. Next slide, please. So now the important thing which comes here is this very great word. How many of you know the meaning of this word force majeure? How many of you know yes or no? Yes? No, please. How many of you, please type yes if you know the meaning of this word, because this has been the most common word which I think the legal people have been talking about in the last 6-7 months. Fair enough. So I'm sure all of you know the meaning of this word. But let me tell you how this word has been explained by the Maritime Labour Convention, which I think some of you would not know. So here it goes. The occurrence of an irresistible force or of an unforeseen event beyond the control of state, making materially impossible in the circumstances to perform the obligation. So it is the occurrence of an irresistible force or an unforeseen event. As you know, COVID was something which has caught the whole world in a jiffy. You and I, everybody, suddenly did not know what to do. So even the MLC realized, the people who are behind the convention realized that we have not prepared our convention for this. And that is why it says unforeseen event beyond the control of the state, making materially impossible in the circumstances to perform the obligation. The obligation of what? The obligation under Maritime Law Convention. If you remember 3-4 points which I discussed with you, you will understand as we go forward that how the labor state, how the port state, how the flag state of the vessel, how the ship owners, the managers were not able to comply with these obligations, and what we did, what Maritime Labour Convention did in order to ensure that still we find a way to go about it. So now, next slide please. First thing which you need to understand, that on 11 September 2020, finally the IMO and everybody has declared the seafarer as a key worker. Now what does the meaning of key worker mean? The key worker means that a person has been identified as doing some service. For me, if you ask me, the seafarer have been carrying all the goods all over the world from the ship from one place to another during all these times. There were hardly any ships which stopped, which means your food which is coming today, your your Amazon gifts or your various other places from where you must be buying a lot of things, they are all being shipped from various places, and most of it is happening with sea. Now during all this time, when we had this lockdown, we had this issue where we were all at home, the seafarer was still at sea on the ship, transporting goods from one place to another. Now if the person during this time also is going to serve and make sure his professional commitments are maintained, we need to find a way that he is considered a key worker. So the key worker means that this person should get some special rights which any other nationality person or any other professional person may not be obliged with. And what are those typical key things that people would like to have? One, as you know, the seafarers are all over the world from various nationalities, and they are going from one port to another. Now there is a way where they have to come back home, and some new people have to go back. I am sure all of you are aware the situation of the flight, and the flights being cancelled, airports being closed. So how do people go from one place to another? And how does a seafarer leave a ship? He cannot just be sitting on a ship all the time. So in order to make sure that a seafarer can come back home, we need to make sure that he is set to be a key worker, and the various countries make sure that special provisions are made that this seafarer can come from that country to his own country. And even in his own country also, there should be special laws where he can go from the airport to his home without any problem. Apart from that, one of the most important things which a key worker should get is what you read on the slide, the safety and the health protection. I would like to tell you that during this COVID times, of course, things are much better now after 6 months almost going down the line, 6 to 7 months. There were times when the ship was alongside in a port or in the anchorage, and they wanted some medical facilities, and they wanted people to be shown to doctors, but the port would not allow it, because they were afraid that if they come out and they might have COVID, and they could affect the others also. As per the World Health Organization, now this is a very important thing which the seafarers and the ships have the right. And as per the Article 28, paragraph 2, where the World Health Organization says that no matter what, a seafarer should be given the right to get medical attention at any time, in any port. In order to control this, in order to ensure that this is implemented, The Maritime Labour Convention, after a very long time, after accepting the fact that we are not prepared for it and there are many other changes that we need to do in order to comply with these COVID circumstances, around 10th July, issued a list of 11 items which could be covered as a special consideration to COVID. And they said that even if some of the obligations you cannot comply of MLC, no problem, but do not make it an excuse for not complying for it. Which means, if a port allows a seafarer to sign off, if there is a flight which takes him to his home, and if that nationality from where he belongs accepts him, please make sure that he signed off. And then don't give an excuse that because of COVID, I'm not signing off that person. Or for that matter, if you are in a port and the port requires to give you a medical attention, a medical requirement is there for saving against the COVID, make sure that the port authorities find a way, suitable way, in which such things can move from the port to the ship and the seafarer can be given the attention. So all these things which came into picture, and there was a big case of Diamond Princess cruise ship, sometime if I remember right in March or April, when there were almost 3,500 passengers on the ship who were quarantined and they were taken care of. And similarly, the passenger ships, the crew on that ship, the catering staff on that ship, the cooks on that ship, they were all considered seafarers and they were all also be taken care of. So the safety and health points, the medical equipment, the PP is personal protective equipment. The personal protective equipment for a seafarer like alcohol, sanitizers, gloves, masks, shields, and any kind of oxygen bottles or thermometers to check, all these are PP. Adequate medical care while working on board. Medical advice by radio or 𝗟𝗯cie communication 24/7 free of charge. 𝗟𝗯cie means satellite communication, which is used on the ship. Should not be prevented from embarking or disembarking, discharging or loading cargo or stores, or taking on fuel, water, food and supplies. Many ports stop these vessels to take any food or water or any supplies. But as you see, a ship which is floating in an anchorage or in port, it has got no means to produce its own food. It does not have any means to produce water while it is standing. While it is sailing, there is a way to produce water also. But that water is not certainly a suitable one to drink. So they need proper water to drink also. They need stores. They need basic things like soap. They need some things like their own bed sheets and things like that also. So all this safety and health is what was required by the MLC to be ensured to be provided to the seafarer irrespective of the COVID situation, while taking all the precautions in order to safeguard the seafarer and the port people. Next slide, please.
Sir, here I would like to bring this question which Abhishek Sharma has asked. The ship owner shall pay to each seafarer on board an indemnity against unemployment resulting from such loss or foundering of ship, which shall be specified in the collective bargaining agreement. So what do you think of this, sir?
Okay, this question is totally different from COVID. It is a totally MLC based question, but I'll quickly answer it since somebody has asked. First of all, what is a CBA? CBA is a collective bargaining agreement. And that is what something the SEA, the Seamen Employment Agreement, is made out of from. So what it basically means is, if a vessel has foundered and it is no more of commercial value, or if it has pirates on board, if it has got, it is prevented from doing any commercial voyage, but the seafarer is still on board. A ship owner cannot say that because my ship is not doing a commercial voyage, I will not pay you. So till the time a seafarer is on board, the ship is said to be safely manned, and a seafarer is supposed to be paid by the ship owner. This is a very crux of it here, and I would not be able to talk more about it, otherwise I will miss what I have to talk just now. So we can discuss that later in other time. Let's move ahead. Okay. Now this is what is called facilitation of transit and transfer of seafarers and repatriation. Can you tell me what is the expected contract period for a seafarer? As you all know that people at sea are not on a fixed contract mostly. They all go on a ship for a short contract and then they come back from home. What is the maximum time allowed for a ship seafarer today to have a contract? Can you just put a number, whatever you feel? 𝗍𝗁𝗂𝗍, you know, you have read it already. I know that. 1 year, 6 to 9 months, 6 months maybe. 6 months. Good. Okay. Let's move on. Your guesses are not very far, but the thing is that today MLC requires that in 1 year a person should get 30 days leave. So it practically means that 11 months is the maximum sea sailing time that a seafarer should have. Of course, there is some plus minus which is allowed in usual circumstances, but it is said that 11 months is the time in which a seafarer should be working on board, and that's it. After that, he should be signed up, because it is said that today, if a seafarer is working longer than that, it can result in some kind of stress for him. It can result in fatigue for him, and he may not be able to perform his duties properly. And I hope you agree that he is handling $1 million, millions of dollars of properties and cargo, and he's moving around in water and navigating and running those machineries day in and out. So it is very important that the people should be vested and changed over a period of time. So 11 months is what is allowed as per MLC as the maximum contract a person should be given. It can be extended with sort of mutual agreement between the ship owner, manager and the seafarer, but it cannot be increased without a proper agreement between all of them in a certain specific condition. However, now as you would see, repatriation is going back home. Now if a port is not allowing you to sign off, leave the ship, and if there is no airplane which is running from one place to another, flying from one place to another, and if the airports are not open, what can the ship owner do? The ship owner can do nothing. However, if some special arrangements by the flag state can be met, if some special permission can be given, and if a flight can be arranged, like a lot of companies did, chartered flights they had, where only the seamen were in that whole flight, and they found some hubs where they were allowed to move and get the seafarers, and they transferred the seafarers from there and got the new seafarers there. So places like Singapore and some places in UAE, Dubai, Oman, they were the hot spots where the lot of seafarer activity was going on. Now you have to understand that at these times, it could be possible that I finished my 11th month in February 2020, and then suddenly this COVID thing came, and next 3 months I cannot sign off. So what MLC did, they said, we understand that this is a situation. This is next slide, Anubhav. They understood that there is a situation where we need to look into, and they allowed that the expiry of a seafarer employment agreement can be extended by the local bodies, by the local national laws, depending on the condition of the local area also, and it can be increased to a certain number of months. Some, like Panama, they increased it to 6 months. So they said within 6 months of after completing the contract, you can still make sure that people can be signed up. Why did Panama do? Why did the other national companies, national organizations, national laws were required? For a simple reason that let's say a ship went to Australia. Now in Australia, they have only extended it for 3 months. But the ship's flag is Panama, and Panama is increased it for 6 months. So a ship owner can say that I am following the rules of Panama, and they have allowed me to extend the contract to 6 months. And during this time, I am making sure, evaluating the situation at various places, and making sure that the person can be signed off if possible, and if he has completed his contract. So at very short intervals, we are monitoring the situation and making sure that the best alternative for the seafarer can be there. In this scenario, the flexibility of Maritime Labour Convention was seen, where they knew that the situation is not so good for the people to sign off, for the seafarers to sign off, and they allowed the flag and the various countries to increase the number of months of the contract period of the seafarer to avoid any problem from the insurance point of view, from the port state control point of view, and from any other legality point of view which would come into play in case the contract was extended. So that is basically what it is. Now, next slide, please. So as you would have read this, maximum period of service on board and safeguards. The extension of the period of service on board beyond the default 11 months should be authorized only on case-by-case basis. A possibility to divert the ship to port where repatriation is possible should be taken into account. Let me explain this point to you. A vessel is making a voyage. You know, we had one example recently where a vessel was moving from Brazil to Singapore. And the master at some point of time near Madagascar decided that he should divert the vessel to India, because he said that we have completed our contract and we should be signed off. Now, there are mixed opinions what the master should have done and what he should not have done. And by changing the route of the ship, the consequences on insurance are also there, which is another possibility which we will discuss somewhere else, some other day. So even though the vessel was going to Singapore, and that would have been added another 10 days or something from India while sailing from the ship, but the master decided that he and his crew should be signed off and went to Mumbai. Now this is something which is debatable, but I just threw the question here because there are people out here of legal acumen, and you can read it later about the case. But for the moment, many owners, many ship charterers, they allowed a vessel to divert to a certain hotspot where the people were being signed on and signed off to initiate the change of crew, and lot of people, lot of money was spent in order to make sure that the safeguard of the human rights, of the seafarer rights, and their right to repatriate is maintained as best as possible. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, you have to understand that a ship has got a very limited number of people. It normally goes from 16 to 21, normally. Once upon a time, there were almost 50 people on ship also. But in last 20 years, or 25 years I should say, it has reduced to 20 to 16 and things like that. In fact, there are ships which I can tell you they have got only 6 people also, and they run the show. So now there is something called minimum safe manning on a ship, and which is described by the flag state as the minimum kind of officers, minimum kind of people who should be kept on board in order to run the ship safely and efficiently. Can you tell me, in any office, do you have a requirement of minimum number of people to run that office? Type yes or type no. Do you have a requirement in any office, the minimum number of people required? Type yes or no, please, in the chat. You have. Very good. So, Anubhav, you have said yes, sir. You have a minimum requirement. Can you tell me any one office where there is a minimum requirement of the people to be there to run that office, please?
Sir, per se, statutory requirement is none. But of course, we will be needing an office boy.
My friend, we are all lawyers out here. We are only talking laws. We are not talking commercial. I am a commercial man also, in the sense I do sale and purchase of ships and all. But you people, everybody is a lawyer out here. So is there a requirement, I said?
For offices, no.
That is the question. Please read my, hear my question properly. I said, is there a requirement? I said. I didn't say, do we need?
All right.
No mandatory requirement is there. So please understand, on the ship we have a mandatory requirement of the people on board: a captain, an officer, a junior officer, an engineer, senior engineer, a junior engineer to look after, some crew members to take it. And because of that, there was an idea that if we sign off a person and do not send a reliever, at least for that person. Now, MLC gave this option to the national authorities of the countries to decide that if you reduce one person of that ship or 2% of that ship, depending on which department he is from. So basically the departments are navigation, engineering, and the general welfare and cooks. So mess, what they call. So basically these three are the departments. Now if I reduce one person from the navigation, one person from the engineering, or one person from the cook department or the mess department, can I still run the ship? Yes, I can still run the ship. There are times when we fall sick on the ship. I have got fever on the ship. I get injured on the ship. We do manage among ourselves. Then how do we manage the work among ourselves? But here what we are talking is that a person would be signed off totally, and there will be no reliever of that person. The safe manning of that ship will be reduced. It will be now on a reduced manning and not on a minimum safe manning. Now this point was debated a lot, and it was said that as far as possible this should be avoided, but if it is to be done, it should be ensured that a proper risk assessment is carried out, and then only the people are reduced on the ship. Next slide, please.
Sir, if you allow, just one question, very small. What are the criteria for reducing the manpower on a ship? If you can give us 4 or 5 pointers.
Yeah, fair enough. See, on a ship we need to do navigation, where somebody on the bridge, where the navigation bridge is there, from where all the ship is steered, what you say, steering room of the ship. You need to have people who are watching what is happening around. So you need normally a watches for 4 hours. So every 4 hours one new person is changing. So we need minimum 3 officers who can change their watches. Now if one person is missing, which means there are 2 people left. Now if 2 people are left, and if the captain is separate also, not a watchkeeper, they all 3 need to keep watches for 4 hours. But if captain is also a watchkeeper in that ship, it means only 2 people are left, which means 6 on people are there. But then you remember I told you there is something called a rest period also, working hours on a ship also. Now if people keep working 6 on 6 off, they will not be able to comply with the rest period requirement of the ship also. Similarly, in the engine room, there is chief engineer, there is second engineer, there is third engineer, there is fourth engineer, and these people, they manage the manning of the engine room, and they make sure the number of hours is spent to monitor the machinery which is running, and also ensure the maintenance of the machinery is carried out. Now if one person is reduced, the burden on the others comes more. Now this burden can be shared if it is an emergency, if a person is sick, if a person is injured. But this cannot keep continuing for months. Then we need to find a solution for it. So and let's say a cook on a ship, these days there are basically one senior cook, chief cook what we call, and one junior cook. Now if one of them falls sick, there is only one chief cook which is left. And that fellow, poor fellow, every day has to cook a breakfast, a meal, dinner for almost 20 people. Now how long can he do that? We can always give him help from the other crew members, but then it cannot keep continuing. So this is what about the safe manning, which is. I hope in a brief I have explained to you that good enough.
Yes, sir. Very practical insight. All right. I'm moving to the next slide.
Now, expiry of medical certificates. A medical certificate, normally when it expires, it is allowed to extend to the next port of call. Let's say you are in the middle of Atlantic on a 20-day voyage and your certificate expires in the middle of Atlantic. You can do nothing about it. So the Maritime Labour Convention, Anubhav, as you remember, you had asked me, why especially for seafarers? Now today, if you are ashore and if there is some medical certificate you require to work in a company, you can always go next day to some other doctor and go and get it checked, and you can get a new certificate. But for a seafarer who is in the middle of Atlantic or Indian Ocean or a Pacific Ocean, what does he do? He can only wait for the next port of call. So the next port of call, let's say Mumbai, let's say Colombo, and there a certified doctor can go, and as per the ILO convention and as per the MLC requirements, he can get a medical certificate renewed. A medical certificate expiry is almost 2 years, and it should not increase more than 3 months, as is mentioned. So now assume if somebody's medical certificate was expiring in Feb and he was supposed to leave the ship and sign off from the ship, but he continued for another 4 months. Now what to do? Again, MLC came into picture and said, we understand this is a situation, this is a very important issue where a medical certificate should be there, valid medical certificate should be there, and that is why they allowed an extension of certain period of time in order to ensure that the medical certificate of a crew does not expire. Please understand, not only it's about the medical health of the person, but it is also about the insurance of the person, the seafarer, which is getting. Because tomorrow the insurance will say that your medical certificate expired. Your person was not healthy enough to work on the ship. So in order to avoid all these litigations, all that issues, we made sure that the medical certificate of the vessel, medical certificate of the person, the seafarer, is allowed to continue for a certain extended period of time without hampering the operation of the vessel. Next slide, please. Certification in respect of training and qualification is one convention which dictates what kind of training and qualification you should have. In order to ensure that the people are following the right information, have the right information as the technology grows and as their time at sea improves, there is retraining which lot of seafarers have to do. And then their certificates have a certain expiry date, and after that they need to go for refresher course in order to ensure that they can come back to sea. Now again, if somebody's certificate is expiring, it means basically that person is not qualified, now no more competent to carry out that duty. Now if a person is on ship and he cannot sign off from the ship in order to get such kind of a certification done, what to do? Again, MLC came into picture and they said, fine, if you are not able to carry out the certification or training, no problem. For a certain period of time, we will allow you to extend that whatever training you have got, whatever certification you got, as a good enough time till you sign off and go back ashore. If I remember right, the Indian government, they said that people who have already joined before September 2020 and whose certificates were expiring in this recent time, they have been allowed at least 1 year time when before that they can sign off and they can come and do the certification of their course, and they can again come back and ensure that their certificates are renewed or the refresher course is done to issue them the proper certificates once again to go back at sea. These are all standards of training and working conditions, convention, STCW, and we have to ensure that we comply with them at all the time while running a ship. Next slide, please. Maritime Labour Certificates and Inspections. If you remember, initially I told you that every ship needs a Maritime Labour Certificate in order to ensure that it is complying with the MLC regulation, depending on the flag which is flying and if it has ratified that convention. Let us say that there is a point where the labor certificate is expiring, which expires at a certain time interval of 2.5 years, when every time it has to be, and every annual inspection, it has to be checked by a recognized organization. But the ship cannot get a surveyor on board in order to check the certificate. So what to do now? If the certificate is expired, which means the vessel is no seaworthy, and if the vessel is not seaworthy, then the insurance lapses. If the insurance lapses, then the ship owner is at a great risk. In order to comply with all these requirements, MLC again said that we allow a certain period of time which will ensure that your certificate does not expire, or we will issue you an interim certificate in order to ensure that you can do a voyage of at least 3 months, 6 months, before which the things would normalize, and you can get an inspector, you can get a surveyor on board in order to ensure that the certificate can be renewed. Now, these are some things which the MLC never had foreseen, that something like this would happen, that a surveyor cannot go on board or an inspector cannot go on board to check a vessel. It was not something which was thought of, and that is why everybody was caught in a wilderness. And these were sudden changes which people had to give thought to, and they took a couple of months, but they came out with a strong 11-point circular which ensured that all such issues of COVID can be handled at least for the short term, and hopefully in the year end, when MLC will again be revised, the new MLC will have a lot more to help in such kind of pandemics and things like that, which could not been foreseen at an earlier stage. Next slide, please. Social protection, seafarers entitlement, paid sick leave in case of infection or quarantine. There was somewhere related question which was there before. So how you see, I said I'll come to it later. Now, social protection, seafarers entitlement to paid sick leave. It is, what it means is, when a ship seafarer is on board, even if he falls sick, it is not that it is deducted from his wages that he has fallen sick and you cannot do this or cannot do that. For a seafarer who is living on a ship, he is away from his family, it has to be made sure that till the time he is on board, he is paid, even if he is sick also. Now, let us assume that the person had got infected of COVID. Now, if that person does get infected of COVID, what does he do? He may not be able to work, he might be hospitalized or things like that. Now, even during these times, there is certain limitation which is allowed by the CBA, a 3 months time or a 4 months time, depending on the CBA, in which period the seafarer still needs to be paid. And all the medical bills, all the care which has to be taken, given to that seafarer should be borne by the ship owner, should be by the manager, and not be deducted from the seafarer's wages. In case of quarantine, that means when a person is landed ashore, but due to the reasons, as you know, there were some rules some time back that for 14 days you need to be quarantined, or for 7 days you need to be quarantined. So you are still working, you are still considered a seafarer if you have to go through all this, and make sure that you get paid. Now, how much to be paid? That is another story, and that is basically the basic wages which are paid, because you are not working anymore. So it is in the ratio of the basic wages that such pays of quarantine or if you are sick are considered, and not the total wages which you are paid while you are performing a professional duty on board the ship. Next point, please. Shore leave and welfare facilities during the pandemic. As you know that a ship is moving from port to port, and often they say that a seafarer does not move from port to port, a ship moves from port to port. And with the present condition of employment, where it is so hectic that within 24 hours the ships are discharging cargo and moving on, or they are just saying for 10 hours or 12 hours, there is hardly a time when a seafarer can get a shore leave. I remember my times of sailing when my ship would go on any port and we normally would be there for 24 hours, 36 hours. And among ourselves, our officers and crew, we used to make sure that we plan in such a way that in some port I go, some port other person goes, and we used to go out and go and do our shopping or get our necessaries and things and all that. But during the COVID time again, as you know, The fourth net did not allow you to come out. Or the welfare facility. Now, what is welfare for a seafarer? Basic necessities. He needs to go out by his basic toiletries, or he can be on board and needs some particular kind of a food which he wants to buy from outside or something like that for his own consumption. Or for that matter, if he needs to make a phone call to his home and there are no facilities and he needs some kind of assistance to get some connection of reaching out to his home. So these are all minor basic welfare facilities basically we are talking about, and nothing very fancy about it. A basic requirement of living is what we are talking about, which should be ensured. Apart from that, as you know, in the last few months in COVID, our sanitizer, the mask, the face shield, the gloves, these have become like any other clothes for us. And today everybody has it in their home. Now, if these people also want it, while they are working on ship, while the shore people are coming on, while they are interacting with them, it should be provided to them in all good need from the port. And the port should not restrict that no stores can go on your place. They should find ways and means how things can be settled, how the time for allowing a thing to move from one place to another on the ship. If there are some rules and regulations, they are followed, and the seafarer gets all his facilities as required. Next slide, please. Abandonment of seafarers. Now, this is a very, very large topic which I am discussing of late with a lot of people. So, first of all, let me tell you what is abandonment of seafarers. The meaning of this word abandonment is when a seafarer is not given his wages or not given the welfare facilities or the basic necessities or a proper employment contract, or any time a ship manager or a ship owner does not fulfill his duties as per MLC for more than 2 months, a seafarer is said to be abandoned by the ship owner or the manager or the person. Scenario of COVID, it has been seen that people, some of the owners were not taking care of their seafarers and not allowing them to get the access of sign-on, sign-off or things like that, or not arranging food because it was too expensive, or not arranging water because there were extra charges for it. Now, this is something which people, MLC says you can hold on to, but certainly not more than 2 months. Or if they are not issuing them the new employment agreements for the COVID period which they are on board, or they are stopping the wages or things like that because the vessel is not running commercially well. Those things are not allowed. And that is where the abandonment of seafarer is in question, and national authorities, the port state control, where the ship goes, are all asked to make sure that people ensure that the seafarer rights are maintained, or else do not allow that ship to go out of that port, and make sure that the owners are contacted for making sure the basic necessities and the general requirements of seafarer are met during these times also. Next slide, please. So, what I have discussed today with you, I believe it is just about time when I am finishing. Anubhav, is it correct? Yeah, good. So, what we have discussed is what is basic concept of Maritime Labour Convention and how Maritime Labour Convention has been effective during these crises and during this force majeure period of COVID, and how it has evolved, how it has found ways and means to ensure that the seafarer rights as far as possible and their requirements of repatriation, of medical health, of general welfare are all met as far as possible, I said. However, now it is sometime in June or July when IMO declared, when the IMO declared that a seafarer should not work even if there is some condition which the ship owner tells is a force majeure, or if the ports tell. because it had been a long time since they were trying to find a way where all the countries, all the ports, all the nationalities would come together and find out a way where a seafarer can be considered a key worker and ensure that he is given the better privileges to go back home, to be given facilities. So at one point of time, IMO clearly said, seafarer, you have been gentlemen, you have been nice people, you have been suffering, but still not stopped the ships. Very good, but now no more. If you feel that your ship owner or if the port or something is stopping you, then please stop working. And we will protect you. We will still be behind you in order to safeguard your rights. And the better part of the story is, now that the seafarer has been declared a key worker, I am sure it will be much more easier for the seafarer to sign on, sign off, to enjoy his liberty on the ship, enjoy the welfare activities, medical attention, and all other such things which are required for a happy professional career at sea. So that is in crux from me in 1 hour's time. I'm sorry this is a very large topic, but I had to put it in 1 hour's time. And I might not have spoken about many nitty-gritties, but I think I've given a basic idea about MLC and how COVID has affected it and how MLC has overcome it and still trying to cope up with that. Anubhav, that is from my side. Any specific questions? I'm ready to take it.
Yeah, Siddhi Pawar has one pertinent question, I think. During COVID situation, if a worker falls sick and unfortunately dies, may or may not be due to COVID, so the compensation is different to him, means to his family, or the same like normal situation?
Okay. When seafarers go on ship, they are insured. They have this P&I protection and they have this combined bargaining agreement from the unions or whatever they agree as a compensation that needs to be paid. And this compensation is agreed number, and it is depending on the basic of that person and multiplied to X number of times. That is what he gets in case of death or disability. It is called a death and disability clause in the CBI. Irrespective of how the person died on board, apart from a claimed suicide, in that also there are ways and means to recover the benefits. Any seafarer who dies on duty in any way is given a compensation. So even if he dies, God forbid, because of COVID, he would still get the same compensation as agreed in the CBI.
All right. So, sir, another question is from me, that we have talked lengths about seafarer rights and everything, and that's great. That is major part of MLC. But I have also read that MLC also incorporates norms to safeguard economic interest of ship owners by establishing fair competition in the market. So can you elaborate a bit on that end?
Okay, if you remember initially when I said that MLC tried to bring a level playing field. Now before MLC came, every ship owner, as per the flag which it was doing, and they could have their own laws of how a crew is treated on board, what kind of salary they should have, what kind of welfare activity they should have, what kind of medical benefits they should have. But MLC said, if you are ratifying me, you have to have a level playing field. Level playing field means minimum standard, this is what needs to be followed. So there were some good Scandinavian countries, European countries which had much higher level of protection for the seafarer and the privileges which were given to the seafarer, and living conditions were much better and all, rather than some other countries. But now, at least there is a minimum standard which all the seafarers will have, irrespective of the flag, and you can have much better standards also. So this is how MLC ensured a level playing field, a level competition for all the ship owners. Is it okay, Anubhav? Are you happy with the answer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Perfect answer. So guys, do you have any other question? I can wait for 30 seconds. If you have any question, then please raise your hand and I will unmute you and we can take it. We will take only 2 more questions because we have time constraint and we need to respect it. If anyone has any question, just raise your hand.
By the way, thank you everybody for attending on a weekday. I'm sure you people must have your colleges and your work and all. And after that also you have come. I am thankful to all of you to have joined here. Anubhav, thank you LawSikho for giving me one more opportunity to come over and talk about maritime law. And I look forward to further more sessions as and when we get time. So,
Pleasure is all right. So 𝗍𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗂 has raised his hand. So yeah,
please.
sir, you can now unmute yourself. Please shoot. Muhiddin sir.
Sir, please tell your question. Thank you, Siddhi. In case ship owner would not be able to make, Abhishek has asked the question. Meanwhile, in case the ship owner would not be able to make necessary arrangements, so proper maintenance of severe abandonment will occur. Are there laws for carriage of medical officer or carrying appliances or first aid? Okay, very good question, Abhishek. Yes, on the ship we have a proper inventory of lot of medical items, and there's a full medical room and hospital basically in big enough ships. And we carry close to about 150 medicines and injections and equipment and things like that on board as a hospital on a normal ship, general big enough ship, which has about 15 to 20 people. And these supplies are checked over and above, and we are having basically first aid and a second line of treatment only for the people on board, nothing more than that. And of course, people like masters, captains like me, chief officers and senior officers, engineers, we need to do a medical first aid course also and an advanced medical course also in order to give a first hand treatment to people. There was one more question. Any other? What is starboard side and port side berthing? Would you please explain? Oh gosh. Okay, that's a very good question. What is port side and starboard side? Now there is something which when you left side and right hand side, what you call. So when you say port side, you mean the left side. Then you say the starboard side, you mean the right side. Any other question you can see, Anubhav, which I can answer quickly?
Hello.
Yeah, Rajat sir.
Rajat.
Yes.
Yeah, Rajat,
Hi,
please tell me.
sir. Hi, good evening. Pleasure listening to
Good
you.
evening, sir.
Sir, I would like to know, sir, I have not seen much general average claims in India. So, can you, sir, suggest or help that what is the future in terms of general leverage cases and arbitration related to the same? Why people don't, take Indian arbitrators into that?
Okay, the question is, what is the role of maritime law in India? Basically, I would say that. And as far as arbitration goes, as you are well aware, the London arbitration seat and the Singapore arbitration and Dubai arbitration, they are all much more powerful today than the others which are there. And that is why, for the moment, for maritime law, just now London, Singapore and Hong Kong and Dubai and all these places are considered still a better arbitration center. And often what happens is, in the charter party itself, people mention which arbitration seat that they will choose. So that is why it is still not something which is coming to India. But over a period of time, as everything is slowly been moving and slowly coming to India, I'm sure over a period of time there will be much more arbitration cases coming to India also. And we ourselves are growing our shipping industry. So I expect that there will be more arbitration and maritime law cases for people to come. We have expanded the horizon. As you know that the arrest now can only not be made in from Mumbai or Chennai or Calcutta. It can be made from Ahmedabad or Cochin or Vizag or Odisha, Bhubaneswar also.
Great, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. So guys, with this we call it a day because we have already surpassed the time by 9 minutes. So yeah, So thank you so much for everyone for joining us here today. Thank you so much, Rahul sir, for coming on our platform again. And it was
kind of you, Anubhav, and I look forward and thank you once again to LawSikho for helping me to share my knowledge. and I would be happy. Please put some highlights on compliance and okay, I'm sorry, that's you. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Anubhav, and I will take leave. And thank you everyone once again for joining me in. And I'm sure if you look out for my name and look out for my check with Anubhav, you can get my details to get in, and you have my LinkedIn profile also there. You can connect with me. We keep sharing a lot of maritime law information, and would be happy to share more information with you.
All right.
With
So
that,
guys,
please stay happening. Please stay healthy. Please stay happy, and God bless all of you. Take care. See you.
thank you. Okay.
Bye bye.
Do break a leg. Bye bye.